Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The air was thick in the halls of Brookfield High School, a mixture of laughter, chatter, and hurried footsteps. Every day, the same bullies roamed the halls as if they were kings, choosing their victims with cruel precision. This morning, it was Jason Moretti's turn to suffer their arrogance. 16-year-old Jason had always avoided trouble. Quiet and unobtrusive, he shouldered his bag as if each book he carried was a shield against the outside world. His deep, attentive brown eyes observed everything without ever betraying the slightest emotion. But what no one knew was that Jason was no ordinary teenager. The only son of Don Salvatore Leone, one of the most feared mob bosses on the East Coast, he lived in a world where order and loyalty were stricter laws than those of the state. The bullies, led by Derek, an arrogant and imposing boy, had been mocking Jason for weeks. They pushed him into lockers, snatched his things, and humiliated him in front of the other students, convinced he was weak. Today, they had gone too far. Derek decided to gather his friends and set a trap for Jason behind the gym. Jason, as always, remained calm. He knew that provoking these boys or openly defending himself could be dangerous, but there was one thing no one knew: his upbringing. From a young age, he had been trained never to show fear and to measure every move. He knew that behind his apparent vulnerability lay the power and influence of his family. As Derek approached with a cruel smile, Jason slowly looked up. For the first time, an icy glint crossed his eyes. The bullies thought they were playing a game, but they had just entered a field where they knew neither the rules nor the player opposite them. That day, school would never be the same again. And for Jason, it was just the beginning of a path where bullying and power would collide in explosive ways. The gymnasium was nearly empty. The sounds of bouncing balls and distant shouts had faded, leaving a heavy, oppressive silence. Derek and his gang waited, confident that Jason would give in to their usual intimidation. "Well, look who's here," Derek said, stepping forward with a cruel smile. "Looks like our little bookworm has finally decided to come out of his hole." Jason stood still. His hands clenched around his bag, he showed no fear. He knew that the slightest false move could trigger a situation he didn't want, but he also knew he couldn't let himself be crushed. "Let go of my bag," Derek said threateningly, "or you'll regret it." Derek's friends laughed, advancing on either side of Jason, almost pinning him against the gym wall. But Jason didn't flinch. Instead, he took a deep breath, his dark eyes staring at Derek with icy intensity. "You've wasted enough time with me already," he said calmly. "I advise you to leave before this gets serious." Derek burst out laughing. "Seriously? You? Serious about what? You're scared, kid." A quick, precise movement, and Jason dodged Derek's first thrust. The bullies were surprised. He wasn't fighting like an ordinary teenager, his movements were fluid, calculated, almost professional. Derek, furious, threw a punch, but Jason dodged it again, grabbing Derek's arm and shoving him forcefully against the wall. Silence fell. Derek and his friends had never seen Jason defend himself like this. A shiver ran down everyone's spine. Jason leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes shining with a silent warning. "I'm not who you think I am," he said in a low but firm voice. "Be careful who you touch." Derek, humiliated, stepped back. Jason calmly picked up his bag and walked away, leaving the thugs speechless. They had no idea they had just provoked the mob boss's son, and that behind that apparent calm lurked a power that could destroy them. In the halls of Brookfield, whispers began to circulate: Jason Moretti was no ordinary boy. And no one would dare forget that. After the humiliation behind the gym, Derek and his friends gathered in the locker room. The atmosphere was heavy, electric. None of them had ever seen Jason react like this. Derek, his face red with anger and embarrassment, pounded on the lockers, trying to hide his fear. "It's impossible," one of the friends murmured. "That kid, he pushed us away. We can't let him get away with this," Derek growled, his fists clenched. He has to pay for humiliating us in front of everyone. The others nodded. The plan quickly formed. They would wait for Jason outside the school, hoping to catch him this time. Derek didn't just want revenge, he wanted to avenge his tarnished honor in front of his gang and all the students who witnessed the scene. Meanwhile, Jason walked calmly through the halls, his bag slung over his shoulder, as if nothing had happened. But in his mind, he was already analyzing every move Derek and his friends made. Since childhood, his father had taught him caution and strategy. Every confrontation, every provocation, had to be anticipated. He knew they wouldn't go unpunished, and he was ready. When evening came, the thugs positioned themselves near the main exit, hidden behind cars and hedges. They thought they were invisible, ready to pounce as soon as Jason appeared. Derek, his heart pounding, stepped forward, whispering, "When I tell you we're going to show him who's boss." But the moment Jason arrived, everything changed. He wasn't alone. A heavy silence fell over the parking lot. Jason walked confidently, a slight smile on his lips, and behind him, two sturdy men waited. Men no brute would have dared challenge. Jason stopped a few meters from the bullies. "Did you really think you could play with me?" he said calmly. Derek felt his blood run cold. He'd heard rumors about Jason's family, but he never imagined he'd see this kind of protectiveness. The bullies instinctively backed away. Jason took another step closer, and his cold smile wasn't that of a teenager anymore, it was that of someone who knew exactly how much power he wielded. "I advise you to go home and forget this story," he finally said. "Otherwise, you won't know what awaits you." Derek and his friends walked away, trembling, knowing they had touched a world they couldn't even imagine. That night, Jason had won without raising a hand. And in the shadows, he knew this was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the school seemed different. A whisper ran through every hallway, "Jason Moretti isn't like the others." The bullies, humiliated and afraid, avoided his gaze and moved away as soon as he approached. But Jason knew that fear alone wasn't enough, he had to make sure no one would ever dare to harm him or his friends. He began by silently observing the dynamics of the school. Each group, each student, each teacher was a piece on a chessboard. Jason identified alliances, weaknesses, and ambitions. He needed no violence to command respect, he simply had to subtly show that beneath his apparent discretion lay a power no one could resist. One morning, Derek tried to regain control. He pushed a smaller student down the stairs, thinking that Jason, who had witnessed the incident, would hesitate to intervene. But Jason never missed an opportunity to teach a lesson. Calmly, he stepped forward and grabbed Derek by the arm. "You should really think before you do that," he said coldly. Derek felt his body stiffen. There was something in Jason's gaze that went beyond simple anger. It was a natural authority, a certainty of power that Derek couldn't ignore. I just wanted to." Derek stammered. "You just wanted to humiliate someone weaker than you. Fine. But now I'm watching you. One more mistake, and you'll be the one who'll be humiliated," Jason said, letting go of Derek's arm. The simple gesture sent shockwaves through the air. The thugs looked at each other, unable to respond. The message was clear, Jason would never back down, and any attempt at revenge would backfire. From that day on, respect replaced fear. Students began approaching Jason not out of fear, but out of admiration. He had never laid a hand on anyone, yet his reputation extended beyond the school walls. The bullies realized they had underestimated a boy whose family and training had made him invincible at their level. But in the shadows, Jason knew this was just the beginning. Derek and his gang wouldn't be satisfied with this humiliation. Soon, they would seek to strike back. And when that time came, Jason would be ready. Derek and his friends couldn't forget the humiliation in the parking lot. Every night, he replayed the scene in his head, Jason, calm, unflappable, supported by two massive men, their icy smiles a warning. This time, he couldn't settle for mere intimidation. "We're going to show him we're not losers," Derek growled during a secret meeting in the basement of an abandoned garage. This time, he's going to regret humiliating us. The plan took shape. They planned to surprise him after school, corner him in a secluded spot, and make sure no one could intervene. Everything had to be perfect. Every detail, every position, every alibi. Derek felt a mixture of adrenaline and fear. He knew Jason wasn't an ordinary boy, but he refused to back down. Meanwhile, Jason had anticipated this reaction. He had been observing Derek and his habits for weeks, noting every movement, every flaw in the logic of his attacks. When evening came, he didn't just stay alone, he warned a few trusted friends and sent a coded message to an outside contact, a discreet guard who could intervene if necessary. As Derek and his gang positioned themselves near the old gym, Jason arrived calmly, flanked by two burly friends and a third figure no one had seen coming, a former student, close to the Leone family, discreet but formidable. Jason smiled slightly. "Did you really think you could catch me like that?" he said coldly. Derek felt his courage waver. He'd planned for everything, except this. The bullies were caught off guard. Every way out seemed blocked. Jason knew the location, the forces present, and even their intentions before they expressed them. We just wanted to." Derek whispered, trembling. "Just what? Humiliate again? Threaten again? I gave you a chance. You squandered it," Jason said calmly, his dark eyes sparkling with icy authority. Derek stepped back, unable to respond. His friends, frightened, began to scatter. Jason took a step forward, and everything in his posture indicated that he wasn't joking. "Listen to me," he finally said. "This isn't a threat, it's a warning. Never again will you touch anyone weaker than you, otherwise, you'll understand what it means to play with the son of a Leone." That evening, Derek and his gang left the school in silence, fear etched in every step. Jason, meanwhile, returned home, calm. He knew this battle was only a prelude. But for now, he had won, not through brute force, but through strategy and total control of the situation. And in the shadows, one question remained: how far would they be willing to go to try to challenge him again? In the following days, the school's pace subtly changed. Where once the chaos of bullying had reigned, a new order was taking hold. Jason wasn't seeking popularity or demonstrating his power through violence. His strength lay in precision and strategy. Every word, every gesture, every look sent a message. He was not to be underestimated. He began by reaching out to students who were often targeted. Those who were isolated or mocked found in Jason a quiet but effective ally. Before long, his influence was felt. The bullies were slowly losing control, unable to attack anyone without Jason's knowledge. One morning, as Derek and his gang tried to reassert their authority, they discovered a change. Several students they had believed to be submissive were now avoiding them and whispering warnings as they passed. Derek, frustrated, tried to confront Jason in the main hallway. "You think you can control us?" he spat. Jason, calm as ever, replied with an icy smile. "No, I'm not controlling. I'm just showing you that some things have consequences." Jason's words didn't need violence to be effective. The bullies understood that he possessed a network, influence, and superior intelligence that far exceeded their capabilities. Derek, humiliated and bewildered, stepped back and whispered to his friends. "We should never have underestimated him." Jason, for his part, knew that the real battle lay not in immediate intimidation, but in subtle environmental control. Every student now knew the line not to be crossed, not out of blind fear, but out of calculated respect. At the end of the day, Jason sat on a bench, watching the corridors still echo with chatter and hurried footsteps. He knew the bullies' challenge wasn't over, but he now had a decisive advantage. He had transformed fear into influence, and the silent loyalty of those he protected would make all the difference when the real test came. That night, Jason learned something essential. In school, as in life, power isn't just about brute force. Strategy, intelligence, and self-control can move mountains, even against those who think they have it all under control. Derek and his gang were furious. Every attempt to regain control had failed, every intimidation had been anticipated by Jason. Their frustration quickly turned into obsession. They had to find a way to make him pay, no matter the cost. "We can't go on like this," Derek said, his voice tense, his eyes flashing. "He thinks he can manipulate us, but we're going to show him that we're in charge here." They hatched a bolder plan, to lure Jason to a secluded spot after school, where they would have complete control. They had chosen an old shed near the school, abandoned for years. Everything had to be perfect, no witnesses, no potential witnesses to tip Jason off. But Jason was never unpredictable. Since their last confrontation, he had kept a close eye on Derek and his habits. He knew that Derek's frustration would drive him to act impulsively. Jason had anticipated the trap before it was even set. That evening, Jason received a coded message from one of his allies, Hanger. "Derek. 5:30 p.m. high risk." He smiled slightly and replied, "Planned." When Derek and his gang took up position in the hangar, ready to act, Jason arrived calmly, alone but with absolute confidence. He knew that true strength lay not in brutal confrontation, but in complete control of the situation. "Hey, Jason!" Derek shouted, advancing menacingly. "This time you're not getting away." Jason stood motionless, his dark eyes staring at Derek with icy intensity. Then, with a subtle movement, he signaled behind him. Two men, quiet but imposing, emerged from the shadows, blocking all exits. Derek felt his courage waver. "You're playing a dangerous game," Jason said calmly. "But I'm not the one losing tonight." The tension was palpable. The bullies realized they had been lured into a trap they could not control. Jason took a step forward, and his voice, low but firm, echoed through the empty hangar. "Listen carefully. You chose to challenge me, but you don't know the rules of this game. The next time you try anything, it won't be simply about humiliation or fear. You're going to learn what it means to underestimate the son of a leon." Derek and his gang backed away, terrified. Their plan had collapsed in a matter of seconds. Jason, in control of the situation, turned on his heel and left the hangar, leaving behind a heavy silence and a lesson etched in the minds of those who had thought they could challenge him. That night, Jason had proven once again that strategy and skill always trumped brute force. But he also knew it would never be over. Derek and his friends would continue to seek revenge, and Jason had to be ready. After the humiliation in the hangar, Derek and his gang were on edge. Every day, they looked over their shoulders, dreading the next confrontation. But Jason knew that fear alone wouldn't solve the problem. He had to end this threat cleanly, without ever losing control. He began by meticulously observing Derek and his friends' routines, their routes, their weaknesses, their habits. Every detail, however insignificant, would be exploited. This wasn't just about defense or intimidation anymore, it was about strategy, about predicting the opponent's every move before they even made it. Then Jason took action. He used his discreet network, influential students, old family contacts, and a few well-placed adults, to create a net around Derek. Every threat, every potential attack, would be neutralized before it even happened. The bullies began to feel they had no control, that they were being watched from all sides. One Friday night, Derek decided to act anyway. He and his crew planned a final confrontation in an abandoned park after school. They believed that this time, Jason would be isolated and they could finally regain the upper hand. But Jason had planned for this scenario. Instead of going to the park alone, he arrived with a group of students he had prepared in advance and two experienced, discreet but imposing guards. Derek immediately sensed something was wrong. The looks around him weren't those of frightened teenagers. This group was organized, prepared, and knew every detail of their plan. "So, shall we start the game again?" Jason said, his voice calm but laden with menace. Derek, taken aback, stammered. What is this?" "That's what you should have anticipated," Jason replied. "Every move, every plan, every attempt to attack me was planned. You thought you could play in my world, but you're the ones who entered mine." The thugs, terrified and humiliated, realized they were now completely outmatched. Jason hadn't raised his hand, but his strategy and mastery had made any rebellion impossible. Derek lowered his head, unable to react, aware that his gang had just lost all credibility. Jason took a step back, letting the bullies leave humiliated and defeated, and whispered, "There won't be a next time." That night, Jason wasn't winning through fear or intimidation alone, he was commanding respect through intelligence, mastery, and strategy. Derek and his gang now knew they could never regain their former superiority. In the following weeks, Brookfield School had never been quieter, or more tense. Students walked the halls knowing that a single glance from Jason could change the balance of power. But this time, he didn't just inspire fear, he earned the respect and silent loyalty of his peers. Jason began reaching out to the weakest, subtly helping them integrate into the popular groups while keeping a close eye on the bullies from afar. The students quickly realized that allying themselves with him offered protection and influence. His quiet charisma and strategic intelligence transformed the fear he inspired into true social authority. Derek and his gang, silenced, watched from afar, unable to react. Every attempt at rebellion failed before it was even formulated. Jason didn't need violence to impose his law, his planning, his network, and his mastery of the situation were enough to show who held the power. One day, during a school assembly, an incident occurred. A student, unaware of Jason's reputation, tried to pick a fight with one of Jason's charges. Whispers spread through the room, "Be careful. Jason is watching." The student, suddenly conscious, stepped back, his hands trembling. Jason, sitting calmly at the back of the room, watched the scene with a slight smile. A single sentence, spoken in a low but firm voice, was enough. "You should think before you act." The silence fell again, heavy and respectful. Everyone knew now that no intimidation would go unnoticed. Jason wasn't just the son of the mob boss, he had become Brookfield's invisible arbiter, in control of the situation without raising a hand. That evening, as he left the school, Jason realized the extent of his influence. Derek and his gang, humiliated and frustrated, were still there, but now they knew they could never break his authority. Jason had transformed fear into respect, threats into strategy, and the entire school was now his playground, a playground where he was impossible to challenge. But in the shadows, one question lingered: how long before someone outside tried to test its true power? All seemed calm in Brookfield, but Jason knew that calm was often deceptive. A new threat arrived in the form of Vincent Romano, a recent transfer student known for his violence and ties to local gangs. From the moment he arrived, he sought to test Jason's authority, provoking confrontations and sowing disquiet among the students. "So, you're the famous Jason?" Vincent said one morning in the corridors, a provocative smile on his face. "Do you really think everyone's going to follow you?" Jason watched him calmly, without flinching. He knew Vincent wasn't just a physical challenge, he was unpredictable and dangerous, and it required a far more elaborate strategy than the one he'd employed with Derek and his gang. Instead of responding with force, Jason began by analyzing Vincent and his movements. He quickly discovered the weaknesses in his strategy and his alliances. Then he used his network of influence to isolate Vincent, create witnesses and allies, and control every location where a confrontation might occur. A final confrontation was inevitable. Vincent sought to provoke Jason in the schoolyard, surrounded by a few intimidated students who had been drawn by his promises of chaos. But Jason, always prepared, arrived with his allies strategically placed, observing his opponent's every move. "You should really think about your choices," Jason said calmly, his dark eyes boring into Vincent's. Vincent, frustrated, tried to attack him. But Jason used his intelligence and speed to neutralize the situation before it escalated. Every move, every decision was anticipated. Within minutes, Vincent found himself isolated, humiliated, and unable to continue his provocation. The students present then understood that Jason was not only the master of the school, he knew how to handle threats far greater than adolescent bullies. Fear and respect now mingled in every corridor. Jason, standing in the center of the courtyard, felt a cold satisfaction. He had just proven that his strategy and intelligence surpassed brute force, whether it was Derek, his gang, or any new opponent. But deep down, he knew it was never over. Each victory was only one step closer to total control, and the day the true test would come. In the weeks following Vincent Romano's defeat, the school seemed irreversibly under Jason's control. Every student now knew the boundaries they shouldn't cross, and every potential threat was anticipated. But Jason knew that ruling through fear or influence was never enough. He had to consolidate his power and show that no threat, large or small, could shake him. Then a final confrontation erupted. Derek, humiliated and obsessed with revenge, had managed to rally a few former bullies and a particularly audacious outsider. Together, they devised a plan to surprise Jason on school grounds, hoping to finally break his supremacy. But Jason had anticipated this scenario. His dark eyes shone with calm determination. He knew every trajectory, every potential ally of the thugs, and had planned a discreet setup. Allies, witnesses, and strategic positions were already in place to frame any attempted confrontation. The confrontation took place in the main hall, late in the afternoon, when the school was almost empty. Derek and his gang emerged, confident. "You're not getting away with it this time," Derek spat. "There are a lot of us, and we've set a trap for you." Jason walked forward slowly, a small, cold smile on his lips. "Do you really think numbers matter against strategy?" he said in a low but authoritative voice. In an instant, Jason's allies emerged from the shadows, blocking all exits. The thugs' every move was anticipated. Derek attempted an impulsive attack, but Jason subtly disarmed him, using his speed and intelligence. His words did the rest. "Any attempt against me always backfires on you. You cannot defeat me because you are playing a game whose rules you do not know." The witnessing students remained silent, captivated by the scene. Derek and his accomplices were overwhelmed, humiliated, and helpless. Jason, in absolute control of the situation, made them back down with a simple look. That night, Jason proved his power wasn't raw, but total: anticipation, strategy, control, and influence. The school bullies, unable to counter his intelligence and mastery, walked away, defeated once and for all. Sitting in the deserted school office, Jason looked out at the empty hall. An icy calm surrounded him, but he smiled. He had won every battle, but he knew he had to remain vigilant. In the real world, as at school, true power lies in mastery, strategy, and the ability to anticipate every move. Jason Moretti was no longer just the son of a mafia boss. He had become the absolute master of his environment, respected, feared, and unchallenged. And in the silence of that evening, he understood a simple but powerful truth: brute force can intimidate, but only intelligence and strategy make one invincible.